Welcome to the Real Estate Investing School podcast. I'm your host, Joe Jensen. Our guest today is Alex Camacho. Now, Alex is a leading expert in the Southern California real estate market. He's closed over 125 deals in just the last 5 years. He has an emphasis on residential properties in California and also Hawaii now. He's built up a world-class network of investors and is known in his circle as the Master Connector. He currently resides in both Maui, Hawaii, and Guadalajara, Mexico, both great places to live. Where are you at right now, Alex?
I'm actually in my penthouse apartment in Guadalajara, Mexico.
Oh, that's awesome. Is that where you do your laps 20 floors up? I was watching your Instagram and seeing you do your morning swim.
The building that I live in has amazing amenities, and one of them is this cool pool that I share on my Instagram. It's on the 22nd floor, and so every chance I get, I go down there, get some laps in. I got to stay in that Hawaii shape, and I got to stay in the water.
That's right. What's the cost of living in Guadalajara? Is it pretty cheap compared to the mainland, especially compared to Hawaii?
Yeah, it's amazing because it's part of that investor mindset of, hey, I want to live lavishly, I want to live like a king, but not on that type of budget. So this penthouse apartment, just to give you some context, this one I didn't buy it. I'm renting, I'm leasing it, but it's like almost 2,000 square feet. It's like a double penthouse, like as far as double, 2 stories with the loft, and it's 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and it cost me a little bit more than $2,000 a month, and it's in one of the best parts of the city and one of the tallest buildings. So, it has all these amenities in addition to being a monster unit. So that's why I like spending time over here, because I don't spend very much, and the quality of food, and I have family. It just checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, it's funny contrasting that to the cost of living in Maui. It's like you can't even, get a little studio for
or even Los Angeles. Since I'm there a lot as well. I don't know what I'd be able to get probably a decent little studio in an average building in downtown LA with an average view for the same price. So
yeah,
that's
awesome. Yeah. Well, and that's what's cool about, especially the way you've designed your real estate investing careers. You've set it up where you can work remotely, which is really cool because obviously it gives you the opportunity to travel and do different trips and go to masterminds and do whatever you want. But also, to live maybe somewhere where you can get more bang for your buck, like you're just explaining. So that's something I definitely want to dive into, is how did you consciously set it up from the beginning to hey, I want to be able to live remotely, or was it kind of transitioning into that as the years went?
What's up, guys? It's Brody Fawcett. Hey, I just want to jump on here really quick and say thank you for tuning in and listening to the show week after week. It means so much to us. Real quick, if you are getting value out of this, please go ahead and leave us a review, and feel free to share this with anyone who else you think might receive some value. And if you feel like you could benefit from working with us directly through a one-on-one coach like Joe, or through our trainings and online program, head on over to realestateinvestingschool.com, where you can schedule a free one-on-one strategy call and dive in to see if Real Estate Investing School will add some value for you.
Yeah, great question. A lot of people find that interesting about my life and business. I have kind of, as you would say, like a lifestyle business. And it didn't happen that way. I didn't do it initially consciously. It was more of, I had influences by certain people that I met. One was somebody that had been kind of traveling full time pretty much for about 7 years. And he had an Airbnb arbitrage business. He did own a couple of those units up in the Bay Area. I met him in a mastermind, and I found his lifestyle very interesting. And he lived unapologetically, and I resonated a lot with that. And then he also helped me break some limiting beliefs, because I ended up spending some time with him in Mexico and traveling a little bit. So he helped me out with some little tips and tricks and the mindset of how to just think of, I don't necessarily have to be physically there to get stuff done. That's just something I'm used to or accustomed to doing. And then also COVID had a big part to do with it, because during COVID, I ended up moving to Hawaii. And so I became remote. I already had a business going on in LA. I was already flipping a dozen houses or so a year. But with COVID and everything transitioning to Zoom meetings and such, that was also something that accelerated or it was influenced my lifestyle changes. And since I was already living in Hawaii remotely, and I began to start traveling a little bit more on and off the island, I started spending time in Mexico. And I'm like, hey, I found this place that I really like. And so essentially, since I was already remote, I began living in Hawaii and in Mexico. And as of this podcast, I am living more in LA now, and I'm going to be, I am renting my house out in, Maui. I am going to be renting this penthouse out, kind of like arbitrage somewhat.
Yeah.
But that's because my business has grown in that time, and it's just better for me to be in LA more now. And we're also building a real estate investor community that is more SoCal based, and we're hosting events, and so I just see it as best for business to be in LA. Although, frankly, I kind of rather be in Mexico or Maui.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I love about real estate is, when you own like your Maui place, right? Okay. So now you rent it out. Maybe in a few years you'll be living there again. You know what I mean? And then it's like, you can kind of ebb and flow, and it can be a rental. It can be a primary. It can be a short term. Like, you can do a lot of cool stuff when you're in control of the asset. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Which is
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah.
So since we're on the topic, because obviously there's so much to your story I want to dig into, but I did want to ask you, like, how did you put together a team that you could trust, that you could work remotely? How did you get that team together, and then how do you keep them solid? Because sometimes people think it's too hard, or they think, oh, it'll be so easy. But like, how long did it really take you to get a team together that could run this stuff? And how did you put that together?
Yeah, great question. So it's simple steps that you need to take. I believe that you usually want to start in the areas that maybe you're not strong in. So I initially had a full-time virtual assistant that was based in Mexico that was helping me with all the administrative stuff and just some operations things. Since I had been a kind of a solopreneur, I've been in the business now for about 5.5 years, but the first 2.5 years, I worked for other real estate investment companies in Southern California and cut my teeth, paid my dues, worked for them. So I learned a lot of just the details of flipping real estate in SoCal at a high level from those two companies. And then when I went off on my own, I got some help with the admin stuff because it drained my energy. I'm just not good at that stuff. As one of my mentors, Brandon Turner, likes to say, like, does it feel light? Does it feel heavy? And that stuff felt heavy for me. And so what I would do is I had that guy helping me out. And then when I decided to leave to Hawaii, I needed to have someone help me with acquisitions. Although acquisitions is my strength, I was no longer going to be physically there in LA. So I needed someone that was going to be able to cover that part of the business, which is critical to revenue and to getting new deals and all that. And so I mentored or brought somebody on that actually had known from a previous work environment. And he reached out to me because at that point I was pretty active on my social media. So he was able to kind of come on board, start handling the acquisitions. And one of the things that I did is, Brandon, that same mentor, told me that it's probably better for you to start working on your remote business before you start trying to open another market such as Hawaii. And there was a lot of value to that advice because I didn't want to just go ahead and jump right in and get after deals in Hawaii. But in hindsight, if I would have done that, that would have taken away from all the building blocks of starting to manage remotely, because I had never managed through primarily Zoom and phone calls. I was always kind of, the team was at the office or I was in person. So I just really kind of started there, where I had the administrative assistant. Then I brought in the acquisitions guy, and then I learned through another coaching program that was this other business model, we'll say, of having a contract, a type of project manager to oversee the flips, where I would pay them kind of a flat fee of $5,000, and they would get paid kind of half up front on the first part of the project, and the other half once they got the project done and it was ready for listing or ready for it to be refinanced. And so I had these couple pieces of the puzzle. It wasn't that much, right? I have this contract employee that's not costing me anything as far as payroll. I have this virtual assistant that's costing me less than $1,000 a month, and then I have this commission only acquisitions closer that's helping to get deals. Anybody could really do that. It's not really a very expensive business model. And then I just started obviously growing from there, bringing more people on as needed. But that really was the foundation.
That's cool. I like how you broke that down so simply. So you're kind of your GM, general manager for the contractor stuff. So you would just pay him a flat fee, and then he would oversee the rehab.
Yeah,
and you would just use commissions or the profit from the flip to pay him.
Yeah, and although maybe I would pay him a little bit more, I would offer some bonuses if the deal did well. I would maybe pay him more than maybe having a full time employee, but then I didn't have that overhead, and I still had somebody that was kind of on my team managing the contractors and the subs and all that.
That's great. And then you didn't have to have like a whole team of, subs and this and that, or you just have, how did you find someone that you trusted that, because obviously that's a big vital part. If he drops the ball on the rehab, like you're burned, right? So
Yeah.
how did you find someone that you trusted well enough to run that and play that role?
Yeah, so the first one was through my network because if you recall, I was working for that investment company for a good 2.5 years. And in that 2.5 years, I helped those two companies acquire about 65 deals in Southern California. And I really learned a lot and built a lot of relationships. So the first one was one of those project managers that I built a relationship with in the second company. And then the second person I brought on was somebody that I attracted through social media that was a little bit more, they weren't as seasoned with the rehab, but they had a really high motivation to work with me because they seen the stuff that I was working on, and they just resonated with my content and wanted to work for me.
That's awesome. I have this phrase that's been like drilling in my head recently, and it's just that action equals opportunities. And it's like you were smart enough to just go hustle, like I said, go cut your teeth. You work with someone else, which is really like a lot of times people's pride or greed gets in the way of that, and they don't want to go, be the junior partner or just the grunt with somebody else. But that gave you, not only did you learn a ton about the industry, but it networked you in, and it helped you build the team that ultimately lets you be able to work remotely. So like that, all those pieces had to come together because you were taking action. You're doing even the little stuff,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I call it my apprenticeship phase. So I really value the learning above making money during that time. And I think not enough investors take that, or new investors take that approach. Because this is can be a very profitable business. I think it's easy to get distracted and feel like, oh, hey, if I'm helping this person make X amount of dollars money or acquire this real estate, I deserve this much. But the reality is, if you think of it more of a long-term goal, that this is a skill set that you're learning. My goal was always to master flipping, so that way I could make really good money. So that way I could keep a lot of real estate. And so I knew I wasn't going to do that in a matter of a short 6-month stint. So I knew it was going to be like 2-3 years, and it ended up being 2.5 years. And I don't regret it at all. I learned a lot, built a lot of relationships, saved a couple $100,000 during that time, and then I've never looked back since.
Yeah, that's cool. Like it's interesting because your story, it's like, oh man, you've bought, you've done a ton of deals in the past 5 years. I mean, 125 deals in 5 years is a lot, but it's interesting because it's like you were in real estate for 18 years, but for the first 13, you weren't doing it as an investor. Yeah. And then you transitioned, spent 2 years as an apprentice, and then could really go hard for 3 years actually building your own thing. And I just think that that's really telling. Not that needs to be everybody's time map, but it's interesting that was yours. Tell me about how those transitions happened, and why that occurred. After 13 years in real estate, and what role you were playing before, and what made you want to transition.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. So I got my start, I would say, in the real estate kind of investing side of things, or real estate just in general, on the finance side. So I got into the mortgage business in the early 2000s. I'm 41, so sometimes people believe that I'm a little bit younger than that. But no, man, I've been grinding hard for like 20 plus years. So yeah. I'm glad, I should have some amount of success by now, right? But I started on the mortgage side of things after I had spent some time in banking, and banking was a great foundation. But there was kind of a limit to how much income I could make in banking. And so I always felt like, hey, I can go back to that. And I went into the mortgage business. Well, I was in the mortgage business for many years. And then the market crashed because I was in it before the 2008 debacle and the whole recession during that time. So, I had a couple properties, but they were highly leveraged. And, I was on the mortgage side of things, and I was making great money, a couple $100,000 a year. And I was in my early mid 20s. And then I ended up losing it all over that time because I didn't really have any real assets. I didn't have any cash flowing property. I didn't have great mentors. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have great habits overall, had bad toxic relationships. So those things contributed to my downfall during that time. But what did happen that was very positive is I did a pretty deep self-analysis of like, hey, I'm ambitious. I know I'm kind of, I've lost it all during that time because everything crashed. And so I went from making a ton of money to very little money, and still with the high overhead. But during that time, after I started losing everything, I found the real estate side of things. I became an agent. And that's where I was able to see like, hey, I think real estate in general is just a better fit for me because I never really loved the mortgage business or the finance of real estate as much as I resonated with the actual physical properties and being part of. I also really like that if I was a listing agent, I could have a contract for my commission, and if I do my job, that I'm going to get paid. Compared to the mortgage business, where I didn't like that people could just leave at the last minute with no recourse because they found a 0.25% better interest rate. So these were things that there were certain things that real estate just kind of called to me more. And then also during that time, there was a ton of short sales happening. And so since I had lost my properties and went through the foreclosure process and did a short sale on one of properties, lost a couple properties to foreclosure, I kind of resonated more with the ugly side of real estate during that time. And I started working on a bunch of short sales to the tune of like a couple hundred. I was helping other people get them approved. I was seeing a lot of this loss mitigation, which includes loan modifications, short sales. So I saw the real ugliness of that time. And I saw that the real estate investors during that time in Southern California were making a killing. I mean, these guys were coming in there, and gals too, I was getting these short sales approved, and they were making the real bucks because I was like, man, I just made 10 grand on this thing. And then these people made 100 grand. So it was like simple math for me at that point. I'm like, well, I like real estate, but I think I should be a real estate investor. But there was no bigger pockets or YouTube as it was, back then. And this was like, 2010, 12, all during that stretch. But I had this seed that was planted at that time that, I think I could be a really good house flipper. I mean, if I have this mortgage experience, I have banking experience, I have real estate experience. I did some property management during that time. I'm like, dude, I think I could be a great house flipper. I could, if I flip one house a month, that's making $100,000 a month. I mean, damn, I could be making $1 million a year, flipping like a dozen houses a year. And so it was like kind of simple math. It was like a path that I felt like I could take. And then so I waited some time because I got pulled back into the mortgage side of things on the wholesale side, and I did some Airbnb arbitrage. But the Airbnb arbitrage, and I got to Airbnb pretty early on. We were doing that like 2014, 15, 16. And that's what kind of set me up to be able to kind of go all in on the investing side because I was making a certain amount on the units that my brother and I had on the arbitrage. And then I found bigger pockets and a couple other podcasts right around 2016, 17. And 2017 is when I jumped all in. I had some Airbnb arbitrage income. I had the desire. And then I just knew hey, I'm going to go all in with this thing. I'm going to give it everything I got. And I know I'm going to be able to become a house flipper. That way, eventually I can own and have a lot of real estate and build a real estate investment company. That was always the goal. I'm not just going to be an investor. I want to build a company because I can also I can get opportunities for me and everybody around me, and I also can make a lot of money too. So I just felt like building a real estate investment company was really what was my calling, and I could be best at.
Man, that's cool. You played so many roles, from the lending to agents to arbitrage, all these different pieces, and then even into flipping. Tell me a little bit about how your perspective maybe is now, or how it's shifted from flipping and just, oh, cool, I made money off this, to actually holding assets that you're actually building your own portfolio. What's kind of your perspective on that, and what do you see yourself doing with that in the future?
Yeah, so currently I own and hold 27 doors. I have an 18-unit building that I recently bought my first multifamily in Arizona, in Phoenix. Oh, so cool. Really proud of that. And then I have three single families in Hawaii, and then the other 6 in Southern California, and then another, I think it's 5 or 6 that I'm flipping. So flipping is my vehicle to make money. But there's certain properties that I buy that I don't want to keep. They're just in certain areas. They're just
don't work out. Yeah,
it doesn't cash flow where I want to. I'm not really that interested in owning a bunch of single family houses in very tenant friendly states. Hawaii is different because there's the appreciation there that, it's nuts there. I could talk to you about some of that later on this call, but it's true because it's an international destination, whereas California is very tenant friendly. So that's why I bought it in Arizona, because it's much more property owner friendly. So my approach now is I basically fix and flip about 20 homes a year in Southern California. I keep about 10 to 20% of those as burrs, as long as the numbers work out, and there's certain areas that I can keep that I want to kind of own and keep. I have a house in Hollywood, so I got a great deal on that, and I did a full burr on that one, and I'm going to keep that one long term. So there's certain properties I do want to keep because of the upside potential or the location in Southern California, but the rest of them I'm just flipping to make money. We do some wholesaling, and we're doing some more creative finance right now, given how much the market has kind of shifted. But we're seeing some changes right now. We're seeing some definitely some improvements, especially in the last couple of weeks. And so that's what I do to make money. and I keep some properties, but all the profit from there, I mean, even though sometimes people think I have this pretty like cool, lavish lifestyle, I mean, spend maybe 10 grand a year on flights, maybe 10 grand a year on like, Airbnbs that staying in different places. And then, whatever, 50, 60,000 a year for like my overall lifestyle. So my lifestyle is like 100 grand a year. And then I'm making a lot more than that. So all the other stuff I have extras, like I'm building my company, building a team. And then I'm investing in assets such as the multifamily, or such as like a property that maybe has a lot of appreciation and lifestyle potential in Hawaii.
That's cool. So your strategy basically is, make money with the flipping. And as you're doing that, just keep, stacking your portfolio with adding to it, but picking out, kind of cherry picking the ones you like that'll be your favorites.
Yep.
That's cool. Tell us a little bit about Hawaii. You mentioned that you've seen some really cool appreciation there. It's an international market. You've bought a couple of places out there. Kind of dive into what you were thinking of when you mentioned that.
Yeah, so it's an amazing market, but just like with anything, it's a state made up of, there's 4 major islands, which is Kauai, Oahu, Maui, and the Big Island. So I got the opportunity to move to Hawaii through Maui. And, that's an area that's, it's tourist friendly and more, a lot more tourism there. The economy is based on that. And then, so I didn't start trying to do deals right away, but I did end up attracting somebody through social media and getting on the Bigger Pockets podcast. Somebody that wanted to work with me. And so I pretty much mentored him. He was in the acquisitions role. So he started getting after it and finding deals. And so we ended up locating this great opportunity through Driving for Dollars. I'm sure your listeners might have heard of that strategy. So when you drive around neighborhoods and you pick out all these, distressed properties in areas you want to buy, you make a list of those properties and you start marketing to those properties. And so we did that. We started sending postcards out. I gave him this test. I say, I'm going to go to LA for 2 weeks. Here's my Deal Machine password, which is, that it's a software. It's an application that you can upload. And we started using upload, the addresses and have it in an organized fashion. So as I was in LA, I seen the alerts going off because I told him, like, if you give me 500 addresses, we'll start marketing Maui and then we'll start getting after deals out here. Because if you recall earlier in the conversation, I was like not trying to do deals in Hawaii too early because I wanted to make sure my LA business was thriving and just going on, working on all, cranking on all cylinders, right? And then so we got these. He ended up getting 700 addresses. I told him minimum 500, and we started marketing to that. And then we found a tired landlord. He called up, and my typical price point in Southern California is 500,000 and below, or 250,000 and below, because I invest in 2 different markets in Southern California. Well, this guy wanted to sell the property for $1.35 million. Well, because of all my experience with all the other deals, I was able to negotiate a seller finance deal with him. And then I was also able to secure a joint venture partner with that deal because I didn't have really enough capital for me to take it down myself, but I had a great deal in my hands. I actually tried to wholesale the deal to make $100,000 at 1.45 million, but there was no, I didn't get any bites because there was tenants in there, but I wasn't afraid of the tenants because I negotiate with dozens of tenants in a tenant friendly state such as Cali. So I was like, hey man, I could do this. It has enough meat on the bone. Originally the ARV was 1.75 to maybe a stretch ARV of 1.9 because the home was like 3,400 square feet on a 30,000 square foot lot with a beautiful magical view of the ocean. In adjacent to once you start spending time there, you can see these numbers don't end up seeming like a lot. Like an average house goes for like $1 million or more, and just an average house. And so I'm like, dude, this is a good deal. Got the deal together. I found the partner. Long story short, I was able to get it closed. My partner put up the money. I executed. I was the operator, finding a deal, getting it rehab, relocating tenants, doing all that. And then as we were doing that, about 6 months into the project, my partner starts messaging me like, yo, the comps are now in the low 2 millions. Like, we might be able to keep this thing long term if we're able to get a refinance on this property. And I was like, I'm all in. I like the plan, but I never imagined I would keep it because it was, my job was to just operate it, make sure that we got it rehabbed, and then we sold it and we flipped it. But I always wanted to keep it too. But I try not to have attachments to deals because then sometimes you make bad decisions by being too attached to the outcome. And so I agreed with them though because they had a lot of upside potential with appreciation. It's actually a couple streets over from Brandon Turner's house, which a lot of upside potential with that being close to him. And then just lifestyle wise, and then also I'll say this little caveat: whenever you have partners and deals, sometimes your financial situation changes along the path of that deal, and so that's what I'm happening. My financial situation improved. His financial situation improved. So neither of us really cared about the big payday that we were probably going to get by flipping the property. And so we're like, how do we do this? And so again, long story short, we ended up listing the property for 2.8, trying to get a big payday. After rehabbing it for about 200,000 and some costs and all that, we were into the property somewhere close to 1.7 million dollars. And then about 3 months ago, we were able to successfully refinance it and appraised at $2.7 million. And we got a loan for $1.7 million. And now there's nothing in the neighborhood like for sale for anything less than $3 million. So we got to keep the property, have the majority of all our money out, and still have a ton of equity and have a lot more upside with that property.
Dude, I want to pick that apart a little bit. So that's super cool. And I love that it's like you don't even know what's going to happen. Again, action equals opportunity, right? So you're taking action. Hey, it's a deal. Let's move. Let's figure it out, And then as you go, you pivot and you switched and ended up keeping it. You said you actually got them to seller finance some of it. So how did that work? So how much of the original purchase price did the seller finance, and how much money did your partner bring in to cover the rest?
Great. So I ended up locking up the deal with $20,000 deposit. They wanted 25. I negotiated down to 20, and I put that 20,000 down. And frankly, I didn't even really have it to even put it down because it was taken from my LA business. But again, we figured it out. I knew it was a deal, so yeah. I did that. And then remember that 3 month stretch of time I didn't do deals, but I did network. It's not like I wasn't doing it. I was networking with people. So when I went to tap into that network, I found someone who's super interested to buy in this particular part of Maui. And he got on a plane and jumped over because the seller had a $400,000 hard money loan that was coming due. So he had a little bit of that pressure and to sell. That was part of his motivation. And then he had the tenants in the property that were paying significantly under market rent. And he didn't want to really deal with them. And then he had another problem property in that same neighborhood with his sister. So he had kind of a lot of little issues there. And he's like, well, I think what I did well during that negotiation is I always teach my acquisitions people to talk about creative finance or seller finance with sellers, because you never know if they might be interested in, and it's something you just want to throw it out there. And he did bite. He did say he'd be open to that. I went in there and ended up closing the deal because this guy was a savvy seller, so I had to take that lead off of my guy's hands, or else he probably would have messed it up. Because remember, he was pretty new, and I knew what I had to do was I knew I had to get it in escrow first. That way the guy's already like counting his money. He's already like, okay, this is going to happen. But when I talked to him in escrow, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go get this expensive hard money loan. I'd much rather pay you some interest. Like you said, you might be open to carrying some paper, which is, a term that we use in pitching seller finance. Is that something you'd be, interested in? Because I'd love to, try to put a win-win deal together with you on that. And he bit. He's like, yeah, dude, that sounds great. Like, what do you propose? I sent an email out, crafted with my partner on the deal, because also it was in his best interest to negotiate best terms possible because we're going to be doing the deal together. So the guy wanted $400,000 to pay off his hard money loan, and he wanted $200,000 to, just for his pocket. So that's $600 down we had to put on a $1.35 million purchase. Well, that means that he would have to carry $750,000. Well, we pitched it at like 2-3%, a 30-year term. Obviously, terms that would be kind of in our favor.
Yeah.
He balked, and during the transaction, he actually brought in a lawyer, a very savage lawyer too. So I was like, man, this thing took every skill that I've ever acquired. This is playing it cool. I was like, all right. So we presented. He countered and said, I'll do 6% on a 3-year balloon note, which gives 3 years to refinance or sell the property, do our value add play on it, and then over a 20-year note. So I told my partner on it, and he had the liquidity. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. That sounds great. Because we would have to put in, 20-30% down on the $1.35 million anyway. So we would have to put $400,000 down anyway. So it was just a matter of a couple $100,000 more, but we had much better terms. And then the payment on it was like only like $5,500. So we had a very low monthly payment on it, which again gave us some runway to keep the property and not be up against the gun to have to sell it because of how expensive the money was or the payment. And so that's kind of what I did to like secure the seller finance. He bid on it, he approved it, and then we closed on it. And then later on, obviously we recently refinanced and paid him off.
That's cool. Was there a prepayment penalty for paying him off because he wanted it longer to get more interest, or did you guys arrange it where there was no penalty and he was just stoked to get
Yeah,
cash
we
out?
paid, I think it was like a 1 point fee or something like that, a couple, $7,000 or something like that. But it
Gotcha.
wasn't much. I mean, it was much more in our favor too, because then we had a lot of money locked in there. Because we're thinking now this thing's worth north of $2 million or $2.5 million, and then we owe this guy $750,000. My partner has a bunch of money in the deal. I have a bunch of hard blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, this thing took the soul out of me for like the good part of like 16, 17 months because also it was unresolved. And then as me being the operator, I wanted to come through for my money partner. He was an outstanding partner. So, I was also under a lot of pressure, but him and I kind of have always had a great communication, and then we got on the same page. And I'm so grateful that I was able to kind of find a partner that we've been able to just, keep an amazing asset like this in Maui. We call it our Maui estate.
Yeah, and your partner brought in all the four.
Bro, the 600,000 plus
600,000?
plus another 200,000 for the rehab. So yeah, he was into the deal like 900 grand or something, like close to 900 grand.
What portion, if you don't mind me asking, what percentage of equity, or percentage of ownership do you have in the property now?
Well, it's great. I mean, him and I are 50-50. My acquisition manager made $50,000 on that. He had a couple silent partners that were not on title that he had to pay off of the 900 grand or so that he had in the deal. Like it's about 600 was his, so he had to pay them off and give them a nice fee. So when it was all said and done, I have now I've had to put money in the deal because of furnishing and other stuff. So I got about 100 grand in the deal. He has about 100 grand in the deal. No other partners, and we're 50-50.
That's so awesome. And you put a ton of time and effort from your expertise to make it done. And he put in obviously a lot of money to get it done. And it wasn't even sound like it was all his money. He had other people's money that he brought in to fund that whole thing. He got them all paid back, paid himself back the majority of it.
We literally got a wire for $1 million, and I saw no money of that.
Yeah. And you worked for free for a year.
Yeah, more like 15 months. So it's cool. Yeah. I mean, but now I have 50% ownership of this. And if I wasn't making money during that time or growing, my net worth and growing my deal flow and making moves, then I wouldn't have been in that position to keep the property and been able to offer hey, you know what? I'll forego my payday. So that's another lesson there to learn too. I didn't bank all my, financial success on this one deal. I kept on going out there and making more deals happen.
That's so cool. I love that. And I've actually heard you tell the story about this property before, but I was stoked to kind of dig into the details a little bit more of how that all went down. And that's super cool. And it just goes to show, there's so much that can happen with real estate. And you don't know, it might not have turned out that way. It could have turned out a different story, and that's okay too. You know what I mean? You never know how it's going to go until you just keep plugging.
Yeah, we got an offer on the property when we listed it for $2.45 million cash, and I could have cashed out and made like $250,000 and got my maybe 100 grand back. But I was like, there's no freaking way I'm letting go of this asset for only $250,000. That sounds like a good payday, but not for this property and how much upside potential it has. And so I'm just, there's days when I'm at that property, I'll be there in a couple of weeks where I'm just like, I can't fucking believe I own this house, Yeah, man, it's one of those things that the power of real estate, the power of partnerships, the power of putting in the work. You just never know what can happen. And so I love telling that story because I think it's just an example of the skill level you can get to in this business and how it could just, create these amazing opportunities for you and people around you. Because think about it. I helped my partner, have a part, also a piece of paradise and significantly increase his net worth, but he bet on me. And so I think it was a total win-win in the end. Whether we sold it or not, I think it was just an example of what a great partnership could look like because I've been part of other ones that haven't turned out so sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing is it's still there. That money's still there. Every penny you guys have in that thing, it's still there if you ever wanted to cash out. You know what I mean? And
it's a rainy day fund.
In value, it's
Yeah.
I love, that's what I always say with real estate. Every penny you put in real estate, it's just like a big savings account. The money's not gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a rainy day fund, and then just vacation, second home. We should. It is kind of a higher payment because we took out a DSCR loan on it. But
Sure.
Even if we break even or we maybe make lose a little bit on it monthly, it's just a long term asset, and it's going up. And I think that property could be worth $4 million, and then maybe we sell it down the road. I'm not saying we would never sell it, but I'd much rather sell it for $4 million than 2.4.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe in 5 or 10 years we have another interest rate drop, and you can go get some long-term 30-year note at 4%. And you just feel like you pull out hundreds of thousands and cut your mortgage in half. It's those things you never know what's going to happen down the road, which is awesome. Well, that's sweet, man. So that's obviously some cool wins. You've had tons of wins with flips and everything like that. Tell us about maybe some of the failures you've had. I feel like the most common failures I hear about in real estate are flipping, because it is the most volatile, especially when markets shift or rehabs go over budget and all that stuff. Have you had any kind of like big learning experiences outside of flipping, though, that wasn't revolved around a flipping issue?
Yeah, so I would say a failure that I discuss regularly when people ask about this is my failure as a new leader. Because when I first started my company, I was so excited about being in the business and having my own company and kind of being in control of my own destiny that I kind of just hired whoever. Like, I didn't have any real processes in place to make sure that I was bringing on quality talent or people that really had the skills that I needed to grow to the next level. And so I was a pretty weak leader, and I just would, I'd hired this one guy because he was a private money lender prospect's like son, and she was an investor. So I was trying to attract her to like work with me and lend me some money. But he was a poor candidate. The guy was just like bad habits, and all the red flags were there. But I just thought, I'll bring him on. Maybe his mom will lend me some money, and it'll just be worth it. But it was a waste of time. She never lent me any money, and he was a terrible hire. And so that's an example. Also, during that time, like, I just didn't know how to manage people and really get the best out of them for their benefit and for mine. And so I just struggled a lot during that time. And it was frustrating because I'm spending money on marketing. I'm investing a lot of my time, and things are not working out. And then so I'm like better off being by myself or with like just a VA than I am, trying to grow this team. So I think I've read more books on it. I've followed more leaders that I respect and seen what they do to be the best, leader they can be. And so I think over the last couple of years, because now I've been kind of on my own for about 3.5 years, but the first year was just awful. But the last couple of years, I've gotten better and better at not managing people, but leading people. There's a big difference between being a boss and being a leader. And so I'm really proud to say that now I, just create an environment that's, it's kind of intense because, I'm a high performer, but also it's very safe. And so, people feel like heard and the human element, I never forget about that part. But, I'm demanding, I push people, but I don't push them any more than, I would push myself, and I push them to perform in a way that it rises, they get more out of themselves than they even expected. And so, I'm really proud of that now. And that was a huge failure of mine. Did you want me to go to another failure? Because that was, I would say that's one that comes to top of mind as well.
I think that's cool. I think there's a lot to learn from that one. If there's a specific real estate deal that went south to something you have in mind, we could definitely, we have some time to dive into that too. I think there's so much to learn by looking at the things that didn't work out perfect, Yeah.
So, I have a couple in mind. One was a joint venture partnership. And, at the beginning of my career, like I kind of, still wasn't able to get a hard money loan in my name because even though I worked for these other investors, I wasn't on title of the property. And that was, I guess, a drawback to working for these other investors because they're the ones that, are the ones that are on title. I was just an employee of a company. And so when I went to go get financing on my own, I wasn't able to get a hard money loan. But then after that, when I went to go get a hard money loan and I had to go get a joint venture partner, I didn't really set like the paperwork right of making sure that I secured my interest in the deals. And then I had a partner that just pretty much like kind of scammed me out of like 20 grand because he ended up wanting to keep the property. And then we just argued about the value of the property. I mean, I got this monster deal and he just kind of shortchanged me on like, basically, hey, this is what I think the value of what the property is worth. When really it was worth a lot more. There was no reason for him to give me, the fair amount, to be honest. And then since I didn't, put the paperwork in place for me to secure my interest, having a very clear joint venture agreement notarized or something that just kind of protected my interest or being on title, in some form, he was able to to just shortchange me, and back then $20,000 was a lot of money. It's still a lot of money for me now, but it's not going to make or break me anymore. But back then it was tough. It was a tough pill to swallow. And then recently I would say, we are going to be probably losing a little bit of money on some of these outlying areas that we got kind of like shiny object syndrome, and we were like, Joshua Tree. Oh, let's invest in Joshua Tree. I mean, it's a very trendy area. There's minimal exit strategy. So I bought 5 properties out there. 2 of them did really well, but the other 3 that I bought that were more kind of in the outline, in the adjacent cities, they're not Joshua Tree. They're 29 Palms. And Yucca Valley, which treat short-term rentals differently. And so that being the case, and we saw a huge change in our ARVs. And so I'm going to lose some money there on a couple of those properties. Not the end of the world, but like, 10, 20 grand on those. And we made a lot of money on those other two. So it more than compensates. But it was a huge failure because I knew I shouldn't have invested out there, and because it was outside of our box, outside of our strength zone. And then I just kind of let, other outside influences come in, and then I end up buying these properties that end up really just turning out exactly what I expected, just like not what we planned on. And it was much harder to rehab those properties, took a lot of team bandwidth. Not only am I losing money on those properties, but there's just a additional team bandwidth that it took during this time that could have went somewhere else that we can't even, we can't even put those into tangible numbers of how much we lost there with opportunity cost.
So were those meant to be flips or short-term rental holds?
They were meant to be short-term rentals holds. One of them was meant to be a flip, but then again with the changes, so of those three that are not doing well, the two of them were meant to be short-term rentals, but they changed the policies on us, and then we didn't get our applications in time in, and so that completely changed the ARV by 20%. Sure. Which was all coming all of our safety margin, all of our profit, and then plus the additional time it took to rehab those properties and the market change, all those things, kind of balloon, kind of all compounded. And then the other one that was supposed to be a flip from the very beginning, we just got caught with the city, and then it's just really hard to rehab things, and then with the city involvement plus the market change plus just being a bit remote, all those things compounded. And so, but I know other investors are losing a hell of a lot more than me, so I'm not complaining, but it's certainly something I think is a failure because I went against my own judgment, my own gut feeling, like, we're not finishing properties on time here. It's very trendy. I don't care how cheap these properties are. This is not even in our buy box. This is 3 hours, 2.5 hours outside of our, where we really are. Like, this doesn't seem like a good move, but I was influenced by my team. But ultimately, I made a decision. I made a mistake there.
So what's the exit strategy on those then? Like, what do you do to pivot to stop the bleeding when something starts to go south like that?
So on those, we did a great job as far as the rehab is concerned, as far as the quality of it. It wasn't on time, wasn't on budget, but at least we got a really good product on the market. And so, two of those in 29 pounds are both in escrow right now. So, I mean, they're going to be sold. I have private loans on those. So keeping them long term really and cash flowing wasn't really an option because it wouldn't cash flow very much with the amount of debt on it, and it's just better for me to just sell them off, pay my lenders off, and just kind of reset the inventory. So if there was a long term play on there, I'd do it, but we'd have to keep too much money into the deal. It's better to take. Why would I keep 50, 60, 70,000 into the deal and have these like my private lenders not be happy, and then it cash flows barely anything compared to just taking a $20,000 loss and moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
for sure. No, that's cool. I love to hear, and that's one thing I love about real estate is there are different, exit strategies and different things you can do. If it does go south, it's like, oh, well, we can do this. We can stop the bleeding. We can, kill it quick and not hurt too bad. And sometimes even, still make a little bit. Like I said, the opportunity cost is the big loss. You know what I mean? Than even just losing a couple grand or whatnot. But
yep.
Going back a little bit to that first joint venture one, because I think that is something people are concerned about when they start to get into doing deals with partners, is securing their interest. And so I think you had mentioned, but I just want to make sure it was clear, the ways that you could have secured your interest but didn't. And I appreciate you letting us just like beat you up on like the mistakes, because I just think there's so much to learn there. And obviously you've killed it. You're doing amazing things. You're an incredible success for anybody that follows you. So it's not like, anybody can see that you're incredible at what you do, but these little things we can learn from. And I think it's the fears that stop people from acting. So the things that you could have done to secure your interest on that partnership deal was you weren't on title at all.
No, I wasn't. So I could have either been on title as a solo, just individual, or with my LLC. At the time, I didn't have the LLC. But if you would have not wanted me to be on title, that could have been a red flag for me. And say, hey, well, why not? I'm 50-50 partners. What's the big deal? Like, I just want to make sure that I'm on, it's to protect both of us. It's like, what's the problem? Or I could have had a very detailed, which I do now with other. I don't do a lot of joint ventures anymore, but we'll do sometimes on certain deals, is to have a very, very specific joint venture agreement detailing what we're discussing, the roles, the responsibilities, the goals with the project, and then have that notarized and signed by both parties. is, another form of like, hey, this is saying that like this is what this property is for, and if you kind of try to escape me or go behind my back or try to do something, I'm gonna just get a lawyer and then we're gonna go to court. Like usually this is tens of thousands, if not more, of money on the line. So I have no problem, getting a lawyer to secure my interest in the future if that's the case. But I think those are a couple ways that, obviously I do that now. Like if on all deals, I have my paperwork in order. So I just encourage people to make sure that, you trust but verify, or however you want to say it. But, when it comes to money, people act funny.
When it comes to money, people act funny. I like that. Well, like you say, and people's priorities change. It was really cool with the Hawaii one because your guys' priorities and situations changed and they stayed aligned, right? Like you're like, hey, now we both have more money. Let's stay in this thing. And, and you guys agreed on it. But, sometimes it goes the other way. People's situations change. And now this guy's dying for cash and you're fine with it, but he wants to sell and you don't. And so that joint venture agreement that you put together and you guys both sign, you have a notary there when you sign and they notarize this form. So it's super solid. It shows what the game plan is with the property, who gets to make the call, whether it's you or them or a third party arbitrator or whatever. Like it designates exactly how things are going to go down if they go south. It's kind of like a prenup.
Yeah.
But for business.
Fantastic example. Like, hey, we're going to flip the property. If we don't flip the property and we decide the wholesaling is better or whatever, or if we decide to keep it as a rental, when we split cash flow responsibilities, if, we don't get the ARV we're expecting and we could maybe refinance it. Like, so just kind of mapping out if everything goes right and if everything goes wrong, so that you have it all covered, that you're on the same page with everything. Because if I would have done that, with that, it would have been clear. Like, because I did have the feeling like he was going to want to keep the property because he was a little bit more of a buy and hold investor. And I was just kind of starting out on the flipping. So I wanted to flip it. I knew he wanted to keep it. And I was very clear with him, like, hey, man, I know you're probably going to want to keep this thing. Why don't we just like from the beginning just decide that now? But he was, kind of convinced me, and he was a little bit older than me. We say there's a saying that like, when someone kind of big brothers you, like, no, little brother, I got you. And that's kind of what he did to me, where it was just somebody older than me, more seasoned, more advanced, and he kind of took advantage of me. And it's unfortunate, but let's just say I've never done business with him ever since then either, because like he's the one that lost the relationship. We did 2 deals together. First one did fantastic. We made like 90 grand, and we split that, but we flipped it. The other one, we kept it, and then he did me wrong on that money, and I've never done business with him again, and I've done pretty well after that.
Yeah, he probably would have done a lot better having you on his side throughout the past few years. One, the cool thing with those joint venture agreements is you can designate anything you want. You can say like final decision is always Alex's. Like anything you want to put in there, you can put in there. And the cool thing is, even if you're doing, for any listeners who are like, oh, well, I'm working with a friend or somebody I know really well. It's like, I would say contracts are to keep everybody on the same page. It's not necessarily the lawsuit or going to litigation and saying, hey, now I'm going to hold this contract, against you for a lawsuit is like the last thing I'd hope to never even use it for. But what I do like it for is to keep us on the same page and that we have the same memory. Yeah. Because you discuss something, you look back a few years ago, it's like, I thought we said this, I thought we said that. And dude, I've remembered wrong. I've had tenants where I didn't charge first and last month's rent when they moved in. And I've had tenants where I have. And I remember I had one tenant where I was like, okay, well, you need to pay last month's rent. They're like, no, we paid first last month's rent when we moved in. And I was like, I don't think so. And I found the documents and they had. And like, I was wrong, like, and they thought I was trying to screw them out of a month of rent. I thought they were trying to screw me out of a month rent. Cool thing is we pulled up the document and we were able to see like, oh, my memory was wrong. Their memory was right, whatever. And then it was like, it was all cool. And so it just helps you be on the same page and it keeps friends, making it clear.
If we had done that from the beginning on that one deal, we might still be friends. We might have done some more business together, but unfortunately we didn't. And I'll take some blame there, but ultimately, like, that's why I mentioned it here. Like, that was a failure of mine. And I don't want that to happen to anybody listening. It's like, you're trying to protect that relationship. And that's all it is, to make sure that, hey, if things go right, we're on the same page. If things go wrong, we're on the same page.
Yeah, and a lot of times you don't even think about it. You're like, oh, I didn't even think about this scenario or that scenario. I guess I do want to be a long hold. You want to sell, like, but I don't really want to. And then you just, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't do this deal together at all. It's like if you're able to talk about those things ahead of time, then it's awesome. So
Yeah,
that's cool.
I think it's easier when you're
that.
flipping to do the joint venture, but like when you're buying and holding with someone, because then you're holding for a long term, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
people's lives change and stuff like that. So that's something that I mean, definitely it's deal by deal basis. Just do the paperwork. Just make sure you protect the relationship. Yeah,
That's cool. I like that, man. Well, sweet. Well, we could jam on this stuff all day long. Obviously, this is super cool. I do want to go into our final four and get that information from you. Is there any kind of a final thought or guiding principle or habits or anything like that you want to mention that you want to make kind of cover before we go into the final four?
Yeah, so I think it's just this commitment to growth, and that could be through learning, that could be through attending masterminds, that could be attending conferences. But I think in this business, like you should always, in life as well, you should always have that growth mindset. I never feel like I know it all. Like I'm reading, I read books. I also listen to podcasts. It doesn't matter what level I'm at. There's always another level to reach towards, and it's not all about the money. It's just that you want to constantly grow, and I feel like when we're happiest and we're most fulfilled is when we're on the path of learning and growth. And then it is challenging, but I think maximizing your potential is something that everybody really should desire to do. And then also I think that just once you've reached a certain amount of success, that I think that you should consider giving back more. I'm doing that through creating a real estate investing community. Some people do the coaching, other people do, mentoring, wherever they may be. I think you do need to pay it forward, because once you're a success in some way, once you do a couple deals, man, half a dozen deals, a dozen deals, like you kind of have all the things that you want. I feel like not enough people go out there and pay it forward and put other people into the game, help other people out. Because I think it's also just as fulfilling to kind of grow past what you expected, but then help other people do the same. So I would say that's another kind of guiding principle that I have, because if it was just only my selfish wants and desires, I would just like cash everything out, live here in Mexico, and just travel the world and just cruise. But yeah. I feel like, there's a lot of people out there that I'm benefiting from my content, from the events I'm hosting, from me continuing to stretch myself and go even further than what I expected. I'm past the point of where I expected to be at. And then, so now my next goal is just to help that deal makers community that I'm growing in Southern California, and that's very fulfilling to me. And I hope other people can get to that part two in their investing journey.
I love it, man. I love that. That's really sound advice and insight. All right, well, let's roll into our final four. So, first question, Alex: what is a non-real estate related bucket list item that you've recently checked off, or you're excited to check off next?
Yeah. So, one big thing was last year I wanted to visit 10 places that I've never been to, and I believe I went to 8 places. So nice. I'm kind of running it back this year and see if I can get to 10. And it's like, just kind of this constant like bucket list thing where like, oh, well, I want to go places I've never been. And because I also return to places I really like. So it's it makes it kind of hard. And then now I'm a lot more involved in the day-to-day of my business than I've been in the past because of the changes we've seen in the market and all that stuff. So I'd say that's one big one for me. Just visiting different cultures, different places I haven't been. This year is a big one. But I did accomplish some of that last year. So that yeah.
I like that. What book are you currently reading or listening to?
So I actually have it right here. It's called High Performance Habits by Brendan Burchard. I don't know if you've come across this one, but I recently came across this book or this advice that like it's better to read a great book 5 times than to read 5 books. And so,
ooh, I like that. Should read a great book 5 times and just read 5 books.
So I'm on goal round number 3 on this one. And so I think it's really helping me get to, to memorize these amazing habits. And I've never done that before where, I've read a book multiple times, but never like, oh, I'm going to read this thing like 5 times and just cut it up and internalize everything. So I'm really excited about that book.
Man, I love that idea. I've never heard that phrase before. I really like that though, because it's like, man, where you were 5 years ago when you read it, you're taking something totally different than where you're at 2 years ago versus where you're at today. You know what I mean? So, especially when you've had big changes in your situation, going back and digesting some of those like really powerful books. I think that's really smart. I like that.
I don't want to take credit for
I want to go listen to
Alex. I heard it from Alex Ramosi, so I don't want to take credit for it. But I was like, dude, that sounds great. And I just finished it reading for the second time because I had read it like last year, and then so I started reading it again because I felt like I need to work on habits and stuff. And then I was like, and then I heard that advice. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going for number 3, like back to back. Then I'm gonna read it again. And then I'll probably put it down and then maybe read it again in a couple of months or something. But man, it's good. It's good. Yeah.
I like that. Alex Hormozi, Alex Camacho. What's the difference? All right. All right. So question number 3: what content, book, podcast, course, YouTube channel, etc. would you recommend?
Content. Oh, that's good. So
just any platform, anything where people could just start digesting some good stuff.
Yeah, so obviously YouTube, but one of my mentors, Ryan Pineda, he has like a social media marketing course, and that's pretty good. It's helped me with a lot of my stuff. So if people want to get a little bit more involved with social media, I do recommend his course. He's real straightforward. He cuts out the fat, and
Cool.
I think you can buy the course independent. So I do have affiliation, but like I found that it helped me really with my social media overall, just my strategy and execution.
Awesome. I love it. All right, last question, and then we'll let you get back to your awesome life. What text message would you send to the world?
I think it would be take action. That's it. Just take action. It's that simple. They can take how they want, but it means that you have to go do something, not just think about it or not just plan it. Go take action.
I love it, man. All right. Well, cool. Well, what's the best way for people to keep in touch with you or to follow you? Or, obviously you're putting together an awesome network of people. You provide a lot of good content out there. What's the best way for people to access that?
So my most used platform or most active is Instagram, and it's Alex Camacho TV. Camacho spelled Camacho. So you can reach me there. I also have a YouTube channel. I don't have a ton of subscribers, so check it out. But we did 100 straight webinars or 100 weeks of webinars, like pretty much consecutively. And I really gave the whole game out for free. Like I'm talking about deal review webinars. We interviewed people. And so if people want to go check that out and kind of, geek out on that, we regularly get like 25, 30 hours of watch time every week. So I know people go there and see the game. And then so I'd say that. And if you're Southern California, come check out one of our deal maker free meetups that we have. They're approaching the last one we had was like almost 400 people. So we're really large, bro. 300-400 people are coming to our meetups. And so come check out one of our events if you're in Southern California, or fly out. You'll get some great contacts and some value. I guarantee it. That's
what's up. All right, man. Well, I love it. Thank you so much for your time and being here and sharing all the goods that you've given us. And just being vulnerable and opening up, from the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. This was really fun.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you sharing my story, man. It means a lot.
Awesome. Without any further ado, this is Joe Jensen signing off for the Real Estate Investing School podcast, reminding you to commit to growth.